Welcome back to Never Tell Us the Odds, and thank you for joining us for our recap and reflection on the fourth episode of The Bad Batch, Cornered. This week we saw the reintroduction of some familiar and some sort of unexpected faces. We revisited a familiar planet from the Clone Wars, and we watched as the mystery of Omega actually deepened.
Needing to change their signature key on their transponder in order to escape prying eyes, the team sets down in Pantora. While Wrecker and Tech work on adjusting their signal, the rest of their team heads out to find supplies. Unexpectedly, the recent changes to the Imperial currency forced the Batch to acquire supplies creatively. In the midst of this, Fennec Shand is hunting Omega for reasons unknown. This leads to an epic chase across the rooftops and in the sewers in Pantora, which is reminiscent of the chase scenes on Coruscant from Attack of the Clones.
Well, I think in some ways the biggest takeaway from this was Fennec Shan.
Absolutely.
You know? I mean, we'd heard she was going to be showing up. We knew she was coming, but just seeing her was kind of cool. I mean, voiced again by Ming-Na Wen, who played her in The Mandalorian in live action, but to have her voice the same character, have that kind of linkage, is really kind of amazing.
Yeah, and I think it was very cool being able to go back, and see some of what she used to be. Because roughly, they're estimating she's about 60 at the time during The Mandalorian. Okay. So working backwards, she's late 20s, early 30s. So she's probably right now really in the prime of her bounty hunting, journey. I guess I don't know what they call it in the bounty. Her book. We'll go with book.
The book of Fennec Shand.
The book of Fennec Shand.
But yeah, no, the plus also, because when you think about Droid, she's in her physical prime in terms of getting stuff done. But of course, when we had seen her in Mandalorian, she had that massive reputation. So we're seeing her before the reputation. And I guess we're seeing hints of what she did to basically, make grown bounty hunters soil themselves and not want to hunt her by themselves type of thing.
Yeah, very true. And, at this point, she has clearly like a pretty nice looking ship. It looks like pretty sizable. So it's clearly not the very beginning of her journey. We're kind of seeing the prime years. So I think one of the big takeaways is that we're going to see more of her. Like, they wouldn't throw her into this if we're not going to see more of her and for her to be a lasting character throughout the series.
Exactly right. That's a good point. This is definitely not going to be just somebody in passing who shows up for an episode like, oh, this is kind of neat. There's going to be something. It's going to deepen the mystery. And we'll touch on this in a second too. But also the whole question we touched on earlier is about why is she hunting Omega?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, of course, one of the biggest connections was a return to Pantora. And for those people who are not tracking, this is actually our third time in the Pantoran system, second time on Pantora. We will include some links to this in the description below about the different Clone Wars episodes. But in one of the early seasons, they went to the moon of Pantora to establish a Republic outpost and basically found out that it was inhabited by a sentient species the Pantorans didn't believe was sentient. This led to a whole sort of potential almost race war that of course was diffused. Then later on the Pantorans pop back up in I think it was a 3 or 4 part series in, I believe it was the 5th season episode, or the 5th season, where basically one of the children of the royal family of Pantora are kidnapped by Greedo of all people from back in the canteen in episode 4, and then Ahsoka joins them on a journey to try to free this kidnapped member of the family. What's intriguing about this and why I bring this up was because actually the Pantoran royal family headed by Papa Noida, lovely name that, all of them are based on George Lucas and George Lucas's kids. I'm not making that up, and I guarantee that when you first bring up an image of the Papa Noida, he looks like George Lucas with a bunch of blue makeup on.
Yeah.
But in reality, all of the royal family were modeled after that. So while we didn't see them in the episode, we're back in a familiar setting that hasn't been done to death like Tatooine, but is still, has some room for exploration and still provides a grounding in what we've seen before in other Star Wars series.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of other Star Wars series, so also the droids as well, I think we both noticed those.
Yeah.
And while we've talked in the past, we are not exactly fans of Star Wars Resistance, but we have to admit that it exists. And one thing that series introduced was a series of astromech droids that basically had
more of an arms.
Yeah, sort of arms on springs, if you will. And they showed up in this episode.
So we see one of those droids as well as 2 more of the standard astromech droids that we noticed. Like one of them looks just like R2-D2, which was ironic because they also had a protocol droid, which for those of you who don't know is the same droid type as C-3PO.
And then, it was probably literally a recolored C-3PO model.
Exactly,
right?
and I think one of my favorite parts about that was how similar the protocol droid acted. Like, they were just always concerned about everything. They're just they're like the nanny mama droid, very concerned about what all the other droids are doing and if they're following the rules. So I thought that was funny how they brought those droids back, but also kept this exact same, programming. The way they interact, the way they react to things was a great connection, I think, from this episode.
That was really kind of neat to see, yeah. So.
And a final one, they brought back another one of the original Cantina characters. We've seen them pop up in a few episodes. I believe they show up in Rebels, but we're going to call them the Goat Men. We'll have to find out the true name of them, but
as far as we're concerned, that is the never tell us the odd scientific name.
Exactly, the Goat Men. My favorite scene has to be when Wrecker and Tech are working on the repairs of the ship, and Tech says the signature key should be below the relax converters, and Wrecker just interrupts him and goes, blah, 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 just tell me what to rip out. And I thought it was the perfect embodiment of Wrecker, and I love how they throw in these kind of lively moments in between to the same characteristics they keep developing to give us a real clear picture of who each of these distinct Bad Batchians is. Yeah,
because we have to have that. We have to feel invested in these characters, and we know they're clones, but there has to be sort of that difference between them. And more, actually, I guess now we think of less as clones and more as brothers in the sense of how they kind of live together, how they love each other and hate each other.
Yep,
but
absolutely.
Yeah, that's an awesome scene.
Yeah,
absolutely like that. My scene is not quite as interesting, but what I did get a kick out of, and for similar reasons, I thought it spoke to the character. So it's when Fennec Shand grabs Omega. Omega is sort of on the edge of the tower. She falls off, and Fennec Shand grabs her, and then realizes that they're being a hunter close by, and she's like, "We're gonna have to drop her." So she swings her over towards a passing vehicle, and is like, "Remember, tuck and roll." And I love that because it wasn't just like the bounty hunters we've seen in the past. They're like, I can bring you in cold, I can bring you in hot, or I can carbon freeze you, shoot off one of your limbs, whatever. No, she's clearly trying to bring Omega home in one piece.
Yeah.
And
even
that really
even gently, it seems.
Yeah. Gently, She, it wasn't like, whatever, they just need 90% of you. It's like, I'm going to bring you home. So it's that line between be intimidated by me, but at the same time, I'm going to kind of protect you.
Yeah.
And then made me wonder, sort of, will we see some interesting expansion in Fennec Shan's character, and what that's going to have on it.
So my prediction, a little bit obvious, is that we're going to see Fennec Shand continuously throughout this series. There might be a couple episodes break, I think, between when we next see her, but I imagine either around mid-season finale, or towards the end of the season, we'll have some bigger moments with her. The thing that I found, that I want to really think about, we'd love to hear what your thoughts on this are. Who is she working for? Because my thought is that if it had been the Imperials, we already know Tarkin, we've met... and
of course, Vice Admiral Rampart
as well. So we've seen them. So I figure if it had been them, we would have seen them on a hologram or something like that, or we'd at least heard their voice communicating back to her. But the fact that they left it so one-sided, that it was just her, who is she working for? Who is she trying to get Omega back for?
All right. And then so something to touch on. Clearly, they want Omega back in one piece. They don't want her just for her DNA, because you could get that off of a body that was mostly dead.
Yep.
But they clearly want Omega herself back, and so that's what's interesting about that. So, in terms of because I agree with your prediction, and wholeheartedly agree with your prediction. The only other one I can think of is I feel like. And one hand, I'm kind of hoping I'm wrong, because I really like their shuttle. But I think we're going to get to a point now where, they not now, towards the end of the season, where between looking for supplies, the shuttle being attacked, they're going to have to move to another ship. And it's going to be sort of heartbreaking, because this has been, while they did flee Camino, and Camino technically their home, they'd be gone for like 100 days at a time. The ship has been their home.
Yeah.
And I think, essentially, they're getting to the point now, like, well, we've replaced it, we've fixed it, we've done the transponder, but maybe we just have to sell it to be able to afford supplies or something.
Yeah,
we're going to get to a point where they have to...
Or they have to, it's become so obvious that's their ship. It becomes the Boba Fett kind of level of like, oh, that's only Boba Fett flies that ship around. So,
Which, I mean, never mind. That is one prediction I'm happy to be wrong on if I am, because I really like this ship.
cool shit. Well, thank you all for taking the time to watch this episode. Please like and subscribe. It really helps us, get more people watching the series. And really, please engage. Please let us know what your predictions are, what you think. A lot of this is we are working on this channel, and we'd love to hear your feedback, good or bad, on what we could do better.
We want to build that dialogue, build that community. But in the meantime, never tell us the odds.